Alright, ladies and gentlemen, my name is Mengs, and I'm a bit late to the party due to just having come home from Greece, but it's finally time to make a video about Fire Emblem 16, also known as Three Houses. It's a bit of a weird title, I know. Anyway, as I predicted, we got the trailer during this year's E3, and all I could do when it happened was to upload a crappy reaction video from a balcony in Pataga and watch as all the other cool YouTubers made amazing reaction videos of their own. It was pretty hard, believe me when I say that. At this point, the trailer has been analyzed and broken down countless times, so I don't really feel like doing the same. I would just be repeating the points of other figures in the community. What I am going to do in this video is talk about the things that personally excite me the most about Fire Emblem 16 based on what we've seen so far, and also make some predictions about where I think the game is headed. I will also talk about some of the things that I didn't like so much about it. Yeah, if you thought this video was just going to be me praising this game from start to finish, you are sadly mistaken. There were certainly some things about this trailer that made me a little worried, but overall I will say that I am mostly positive towards this game. Because I prefer to end things on a positive note, I'm going to start off with some of the things that wasn't fantastic for me regarding the trailer, and that is the fact that I think Fire Emblem 16 looks a little odd. Don't get me wrong, I think Edelgard is gorgeous, she's top tier waifu material for sure, but the character design just doesn't look like Fire Emblem to me. I've heard it resembles characters from the game Persona, but since I haven't played it personally, all I could do was look up some pictures, but I definitely see where the criticism is coming from. One thing is for sure, this game looks radically different in style from any other Fire Emblem game up until this point, even the Japanese-inspired Fates. On one side, it is refreshing to see new art style, but on another, I hope that it doesn't stray too far away from the classic medieval knight fantasy Fire Emblem style that we've all grown accustomed to. Also, we need to talk about those anime-style cutscenes. It looks like Three Houses is taking a page out of Shadows of Valencia's handbook here, but while the Echo's cutscenes were incredibly charming, their quality fluctuated immensely, and sometimes they came off as incredibly choppy. Judging by what little we've seen in this trailer, the anime-style cutscenes are even worse when it comes to their FPS, and honestly, I am not impressed. This might just be the trailer, but I certainly hope that the cutscenes in the finished game are not going to look like this. I would rather we go back to the style of Awakening and Fates. Say what you will about those games, but at the very least, they had gorgeous looking cinematics. I will also say that the battle animations, while certainly not awful, didn't do a whole lot to excite me. While the overlay of the battle looks absolutely stunning, reminiscent of the Tellius games, the animations themselves didn't look fantastic, even if I like seeing the return of the arrow cam from Echoes. To emphasize my point, I want to compare the scene where Dimitri stabs a soldier with Ephraim doing the same thing in Sacred Stones. There's just so much more impact in the latter shot. I want to see hard-hitting animations make a return to Fire Emblem, and this doesn't really look like that. Even this critical hit lacks that satisfying crunch from some of the earlier games. I will give them some leeway, however. It's not fair to judge an entire game based on a few clips from a trailer. A lot can change until spring 2019. I will also say that I do feel like this trailer was lacking a little something special, like a dragon blasting down a castle or something along those lines. I wanted a little something to make us go, wow, I want to fight that thing. Something like the Stoneborn from the Fates trailer that made us all go crazy with hype the first time we saw it, even if the real thing ended up being something quite different. We did have some old Rudolph looking guy kicking ass with a burning chain though, so that was kinda badass. I can't wait to fight that guy. So let's talk a little bit about the story. Being Fire Emblem, religion plays a core theme, and there seems to be a figure similar to Naga watching over mankind. But this religion also seems to be the main conflict of the story, with this blonde chick standing on as people are being slaughtered all around her, which hardly seems to faze her at all. This symbolizes that some sort of crusade is possibly going on, and this woman, who looks like a mixture between Emerin and some sort of Valkyrie, seems like she could very well be the villain of our story, or at the very least, she might be some sort of Camus or even Sephiron archetype, with this Rudolph guy possibly being her evil general. Fire Emblem villains are seldom blonde and attractive though, so if this ends up being the case, it's certainly going to be quite refreshing, though this shot of her hugging what seems to be a broken down Falchion makes me question this theory. She just seems to be depicted way too positively here, and she's also a little bit too similar to the divine figure we see in the trailer's opening. I personally would love it if we could have an attractive antagonist who thinks she's actually doing the right thing. It's been a while since we had a really good Fire Emblem villain, so my fingers are crossed. In the trailer itself, we hear the narrator questioning the so-called divine crests, saying that they are to blame for all the conflicts. If these crests are physical objects, they are probably a valuable resource that the nations are warring against each other to collect, and they probably hold some sort of divine power that can be used for both good and evil. My guess is that Valkyrie Emerin over here is invading another country to try and take their crests, because maybe she believes it is the will of her goddess or something, which explains why she has this hollow look on her face while people are being killed around her. She's probably trying to convince herself that the end justifies the means, and that what she is doing is morally right, despite people dying. Maybe she believes that the other nations will misuse the crests, and thus they are better off in her hands, justifying the war. I also get the sense that the crests will somehow play a role as an in-game mechanic in the game itself, similar to the Dragon Veins of Fates or maybe Mila's Turnwheel of Echoes. Before we continue, I need to take a moment to talk about localization, because this is sort of a big deal. We've gotten news that the localization team behind Echoes are not working on Fire Emblem 16, which makes a lot of people suspect that Treehouse will be taking the job. The Treehouse localization team are the ones responsible for localizing Fates, and they've been frequently criticized for it, being blamed for the game's shoddy writing in the Wests. I don't think it's fair to blame Treehouse for all the issues with Fates, but after reading some of the direct fan translations of certain support conversations, I have certainly started to question some of the choices they made, and I certainly hope that Treehouse stay far away from tree houses. No pun intended. Now, let's talk about the giant elephant in the room, shall we? It seems likely that Fire Emblem 16 will feature a self-inserted avatar. This has me both excited and worried at the same time. Excited solely for selfish reasons, mind you, because if we're getting Corin 2.0 with a My Castle feature and the ability to visit one another, which certainly seems to be hinted at judging by this footage, there's a chance I might be able to do a Corin Quest-style stream for Fire Emblem 16, and that would be amazing. But that is also pretty much the only thing I'm excited about, because let's be real, Fire Emblem have never been able to do an avatar character properly. Mark from Fire Emblem 7 was in my opinion the best incarnation because he was hardly involved in the story at all. Chris was way too interested in stroking Marth's royal cock, and his only defining character trait was saying "my grandfather" a lot. Robin was about as interesting as a piece of wood, and Corin was, in my opinion, the biggest reason why Fates was one of the most horrendously written Fire Emblem games of all time. Needless to say, I have about as much faith in the avatar of Fire Emblem 16 being a well-written character as I have in Sophia being able to contribute in Chapter 14 of Binding Blade. The next thing I want to talk about is the reintroduction of weapon durability, easily one of the things I'm mostly hyped about for Fire Emblem 16. Judging by this footage, we can clearly see that durability is back, and I could not be happier. Fates attempted to make every weapon balanced by incurring bothersome penalties to prevent any single one from being too good, since they could never break, and the only thing they succeeded in doing was making most of the weapons useless. I mean, honestly, how often did you use the Silver Sword in Fates? Once per playthrough? Maybe twice? The return of weapon durability, while it may seem like just a small feature to some players, is actually one of the things that I think would make Fire Emblem 16 great again. Yes, I just used that phrase, and I'm super excited for it. Now, let's talk about formations and squad combat. Fire Emblem 16 finally answers something which has personally been puzzling me about Fire Emblem for a long while, and that is, do the overland battles in Fire Emblem actually display what's going on in Fire Emblem? Or are they oversimplified versions of the real thing? Sort of similar to Advanced Wars, where on the overland map you see but a single soldier, but once you enter combat you see that it's actually a squadron of soldiers. When you are fighting in Fire Emblem, are you actually controlling a group of teenagers going up against entire armies, or are each of these characters more like lieutenants, each commanding their brigade of soldiers? I think that Fire Emblem has always been a little bit of both, depending on the situation. For example, I always saw Fire Emblem 4 as a game of grand battles, with soldiers literally moving in formation on the overland map, and huge armies clashing on the battlefield, whereas Fire Emblem 7 was much more minimalistic in its approach, literally showing the journey of Eliwood, Hector, and Lyn, and a handful of soldiers going up against the Black Fang. Fire Emblem 16 finally solves this by showing us that each unit is actually commanding a squadron of soldiers. On the overland battlefield we see it as a traditional Fire Emblem game, but once we zoom in, we see that soldiers are running and fighting alongside with them, Advanced Wars style. Though I predict that in smaller scale battles like those taking place indoors, the characters might move on their own without the soldiers assisting them. Judging by what goes on with the UI, this seems to be a purely cosmetic change, but it seems like we will be able to use formations to impact the battle. Maybe certain formations will beat out others, sort of like a formation triangle like Stevie from Lucky Crit predicted. At the very least, I hope we get a chance to use the defensive formation to take less damage, sort of similar to, but not as broken as defensive stance from Fates. Speaking of fates, we don't know this for sure, but we didn't see any indication of the pair-up mechanic making a return in Fire Emblem 16. It honestly wouldn't fit anyway with the whole squadron-based combat, but that's not to say it won't show up, we just didn't see it in the trailer. My guess is that Intelligent Systems realizes that pair-up was way too broken in Awakening, and even after attempting to nerf it in Fates, it was still way too damn good, and it may just be a feature that's sort of unfixable, which is why they saw fit to make fun of it in the Echoes trailer. I personally heavily dislike the pair-up feature of Awakening and Fates, and I hope that it won't show up at all in Three Houses. So, now that some of the hype has settled down and I'm over my initial fan reaction towards the trailer, what are my concluding thoughts on Fire Emblem 16? I'm going to be completely honest, I'm a bit put off by how it looks and not super impressed by some of the cinematics, and I'm also a little bit worried that the story is gonna suck like in Fates, but I'm also super excited that we're getting something brand new and exciting. As more information gets released, we'll be able to paint a clearer picture of how this game will play out, and I can't wait to release more videos about it and speculate, analyze, and try to predict where this game is headed. As I said previously, the time just before a new Fire Emblem game is set to release is my personal favorite time ever in the community. I almost enjoy it more than playing the actual game itself, so there's no denying we're gonna have ourselves a very exciting time, albeit a somewhat long waits. I will probably start to do character previews once we get closer to the spring of 2019, and I of course can't wait to do my very first Fire Emblem 16 character spotlights. Anyway, this video has been long enough. I will undoubtedly be making another one again soon, even if there is no further news. Let me know what you guys think about Fire Emblem 16 now that you've had time to digest the trailer. Are you excited about it? Are you worried about it? Let me hear about your thoughts and opinions in the comment section below, and let me know if there's any particular topic you'd like to see me delve into. As always, give this video a like and a comment, and subscribe for more Fire Emblem 16 videos in the future. My name's been Mangs, and I'll see you all again soon. Goodbye!